So my definition of Mātauranga Māori is Māori knowledge systems. We need to make it very, very clear that Mātauranga Māori is not a traditional term. Terms that were used as responses to colonisation, actually. So Māori is not a term that we called ourselves. It was something that was used to unite us as one people. We were our own tribes, our own hapu. And so the phrase or the term Māori, normal, was placed upon us. That's kind of a response to the desires of another people wanting to collectively pull us together. Mātauranga is not a traditional Māori word for knowledge. We generally use kōrero or wānanga. But what happened is, as a response to education, they used the word mātou to know. Mātauranga became education. And so you've got these Mātauranga Māori, which are two words, which are responses to being colonised, put together to stand for a Māori knowledge systems and Māori ways of knowing and understanding. I like the term. I'm not saying it's a bad term because it's modern development. So I think began as responses, but now we've started to own it. We've started to own Māori, we've started to own Mātauranga, and we're saying they are two modern words and a modern phrase, but it's reflective of a much older and deeper understanding of how we understand our world, ourselves, and everything in our world.
I think Mātauranga Māori is a concept that's used as a catch-all phrase to describe what is actually Mātauranga a Hapū at a national level. So when we talk about Mātauranga Māori, there isn't actually a thing called Mātauranga Māori because all of our Mātauranga comes through our Hapū and our whakapapa. The repositories for that Mātauranga are generally our wharenui, our marae, our toi. Mātauranga Māori is a concept that can be loosely used when we're talking about a catchphrase for all of those things, particularly when we're talking about policies to do with it or, common struggles in relation to it, but there isn't actually a singular element of Mātauranga Māori. The elements are really Mātauranga a Hapū.
I ruto i ngā whare wānanga, i ngā tau o te ono te kau, whitu te kau, i āpiranga ngata mā, i a tā iri ni moko mā, kai te ora turu tēnā korau. Nā rātau pēr i whakatō i tēnei ingoa te Māori. He kupu anō, he ura hora whānui ki ngā iwi katoa. Engari, kua hoki haere tātou i nāiane. We've kind of moved away from that. As we've moved forward, we've realised that actually there's a Mātauranga a iwi. And then now that we've accepted that in about the 1990s, I suspect, there's actually a Mātauranga a iwi. Tūhoi knowledge is tūhoi knowledge. Apanui knowledge is apanui knowledge. And actually, there's a Mātauranga a Hapū. And then now we're down to, actually, there's a Mātauranga a whānau. It comes right down and it drills down. We started up here and we're actually going back and we're going down and we're going down. For one whānau to interact with another whānau, you are using Mātauranga, you are using tikanga, you're using unique things. No reira, ko taku whaka-Māoritanga pēr o te Māori, ko te unique tanga. Everyone says it means normal. Normal, noa, all those things. It actually, to me, means also unique, a unique set of ways to behave. No reira, tō pātai, kai ora anō tēnei mea te Mātauranga Māori, ruto i te ao Māori, i tēnei rā, kai te ora tonu i tēnei rā. Hei tō tātou hoki whakamuri, ki te tiki atu, i pēhea, ngā whakarite-rite i wainganui o kuna tīpuna, wainganui ngā iwi, wainganui ngā motu. I tae rātau i tae, ka tae tāta.
Mātauranga Māori, he mātauranga tuku iho, te ngā tupuna, kia tātou. I think about the creation narrative, Rangi and Papa, and even prior to that, I think about how we understand the world, how we came to be, where we go when we die. I think about those narratives. That's Mātauranga Māori to me, things that are passed down from one generation to the next. And there's a lot of variety in that when we look at those narratives. For example, Rangi Rāua ko Papa, that varies throughout the country. Now, Matariki, the revitalisation of our kōrero around the maramataka, Mātauranga Māori. Our systems of knowledge, of understanding, who we are, where we've come from, where we're going, and how we connect to each other and to everything else in the living world.
So Mātauranga, to me, is everything you need to survive with, everything you need to know how to respect your taiao, your environment that you're in, all the concepts of rangatiratanga, understanding your moana, how to look after it, how to utilize it, how to utilize your ngahere, your forest, understanding ngā atua, so it's a beautiful world, but we need to actually understand and learn a lot more that it offers us instead of just learning it on the surface and just saying, oh, Tāne's the bush, oh, Tangaroa's the sea. We need to go further into finding out now, how can we take on and tap into that mātauranga from those areas at a deeper level so that we gain the benefits out of that and also be able to work and live in harmony with our taiao, with our environment.
E tau nei te noho, i rato i te whakaaro, kai te mārama hau, heaha te Mātauranga Māori, heaha tēnei mea, te wānanga Māori, te kōrero tuku iho, heaha tōna huhu, hohonutanga, heaha tōna whakamanatanga. We look at all dimensions, ne? So Mātauranga Māori is not a subject in a school, it is not a subject at university, it's not a standalone thing. Mātauranga Māori is a whole, ne? Toro whānui te rā kaupapa te Mātauranga Māori. Te Mātauranga Māori kai roto i tō hidengaru, ko te Mātauranga Māori kai waho, kai runga, kai raro, kai te moana, kai nā wāhi katoa, ko ira te Mātauranga Māori. Ko te Mātauranga Māori, te tūhonotanga, au te ao kiko kiko, me te ao wairuai, anarai kore roi tātou mo te meangaru, ne rapua te meangaru, ka mihi tātou ki te meangaru, e tai o tātou kā rongo i te meangaru, kei nā taha, kei wainui a tātou i nā whakaminenga katoa, ne, ko ira pia tētahi āhuatanga o te Mātauranga. Ka rewa te Pākehā, if you were to hear Mātauranga Māori, just be mindful, it embodies everything. Ne? Mātauranga Māori is not one thing, engari, it's a whole, it's not a part of a whole. It's the spiritual side, it's the physical side, all in one.
I puta mai te Mātauranga i te taiao, the same with our reo, and our Mātauranga all comes out of this long-standing relationship with the taiao, careful observation of the patterns, of the movement, of what is called seasons or shifts, or whether we're talking about the maramataka or other aspects. And so, again, if you look at Mātauranga a Hapū, it's very contextual to the place where they're standing, and there's this concept. And when we talk about Indigenous, it's a very politicized concept. People think about, well, that's just this idea of culture and the people who were there before colonizers came. There's this other way to understand indigeneity and being Indigenous, which is, the living, breathing, thinking, doing manifestation of knowledge that comes out of the soils and out of the waters that surround you wherever you are.
When the pohutukawa tree blooms, we know that the kina fat in the moana, that's Mātauranga Māori, and that's observation of the environment over a long period of time. And we start to understand that this is connected to that. And when this happens, that happens. And I think those things can't be denied. Those things also can't be created in a short time. That's knowledge that is being built up over a long period of observing the natural environment, the movements of the natural environment, the migrations of the birds and of the whales. And we understand that when this happens, and it's all connected. You can't deny that. You can't deny that.
So on the criticism, particularly from the Western academics, I'm not a physicist, so I wouldn't tell a physicist how they should do their job. Nor do I work with string theory, so I wouldn't tell a string theorist how they should do their job. They're not Māori, so I think they're the last group of people who should be telling us who we are. You want to know what Mātauranga Māori is, the first group of people I talk to is Māori. It's Mātauranga Māori. I actually feel a little bit sorry for the criticism, because it just goes to show you how insular and how afraid, I think, and how misinformed those people are, thinking their way of knowing is the only way of knowing. Their way of thinking is the only way of thinking. Their way of understanding is the only way to understand something. Those types of belief systems are what have driven some of the greatest disasters in the history of the human race. It has created religious wars, it has created political wars, it's created 2 world wars, it continues to create division because people think my way is the only way to know something. Indigenous peoples have lived in harmony with their environment for so many years, for generation upon generation. And so I think, the criticism is at times, it's laughable, but it's also sad.
And so this way of knowing, being, doing and relating that has grown out of the soils, that manifests in the way that you speak, that manifests in the way that you name your children, that manifests in the way that you build your whare, that manifests in the way that you pass on your education or transmit your knowledge. All of those things are shaped through mātauranga āhapū that are contextual to the taiao that comes out of that. Now, if you look to some of the sustainability objectives of the UN and the things that they're talking about, they talk about how we actually need to change everything. It needs to be, everything needs to be ecocentric. Well, that's how we were already living before the colonizer came along and changed all of that. So this Mātauranga āhapū gives us some, locally relevant, important aspects of how to solve these issues, how to solve these problems, how to be present with our taiao and respond to her in order to provide the healing that's required for each other and for our taiao around us.
He mana anō tō te Mātauranga Māori. Ko te mate o tēnā titiro, he titiro Pākehā, he a koe titiro pēnā ana i te mea. Kei te whakaaroke koe ki tētahi āhuatanga noai ho te Mātauranga. Ki rā hau ko te pūtaiao, ko te science tērā. E hara a Mātauranga Māori i te whakamāoritanga o science. Kei era pia tātou e raru ana. Quite clear to see. But science comes under the umbrella, to me, of Mātauranga Māori. It's only one aspect of Mātauranga Māori. Kōrero tuku iho, that's Mātauranga Māori, but it may not be science. All these aspects of Mātauranga Māori. So, if you used to say, well, a story is not science, well, you may be correct. But that's because you're looking at 2 different things. You're trying to compare apples with oranges. But if we're trying to compare science with science, he nui ake pia te mana o tētahi o te mea Māori i te mea Pākehā. Ki te kore tētahi e piki ake i tētahi, he orite. What is science? It is finding out by trial and error, by observation, and coming to conclusions. He pērā te Māori. He pērā te Māori. Engari kei te warike, te Pākehā, ki te roanga ake o te Mātauranga Māori. Ane, pēnei o tātou na kōrero atua, pēnei o tātou na kōrero tukueho, kōrero tīpuna, kōrero whaiwhaia, kōrero patupai arehe, he Mātauranga anō wēna. Engari, kai raro tērā i te hamarara whānui o te Mātauranga Māori. Ki te tiro noka, ki te pūtaiao, he orite, kāre nui rere ki ake. Ki te nui te ao, if you are a human being, you have science. It's just, I think, the term we have an issue with, and we're not quite, Pākehā can't understand our view of the world and how everything's connected.